Okay, hello and welcome back. Right then, in the last video, I asked you if you wanted to take a guess on what this is, and one person actually, well, two people said what it was, but I'm pretty sure they snuck onto Fourby to find out what it is. Well, actually, this is a Landrover Differential Backlash adjusting tool. Right, yeah, maybe okay, you don't need it now, but you will do in the future because we will be doing differential videos now. Fourby 4x4 now have an LRTV toolbox selection there on their website, and that will take you through to the LRTV toolbox. It looks a little bit empty now. There are three specialist tools there, but these are being designed by Neil, and these are pretty good. I showed you last week the universal Landrover drive flange holding tool, which has the number LRT 51003. It's not exactly the same. It's not a copy. It's Neil's design, but it fits flanges from all the Land Rover range. So this is a pretty damn handy tool. I'll also tell you that we get a certain percentage of each sale of these tools, so you can buy them in confidence that you're actually supporting us. The transfer box stake nut LRT 41007. This fits the transfer box stake nut, which is on the back. It's a special shape, so you can't really get away with it without using it unless you're a hammer and chisel animal. The Fourby also do a lot of other tools, and I'm pretty sure you know by now, but if you don't, some of the tools that you see in these videos, like the brake pad spreader, you can find on their website. Only the ones that are under the LRTV toolbox are actually the ones we get a percentage of the money back on, okay? Right, so that's the shameless advertisement out of the way, and I don't regret actually plug-in stuff because we do need an income as well for this LRTV. Right, so this week what we're doing is the D2 caliper. Now I've got the parts, Brit Part parts, and these were purchased from Paddocks at about £65. I told you about, in fact, last week I did 3 of these calipers. I'd cleaned them out and replaced the seals, put the pistons in. This is a female dog. It was awkward to get out. I knocked the other one out easy, no problem, but this one was a real pig to do, and I had to go to work and find another way of doing it. And I tried all sorts of grips. They kept slipping, so I ended up welding a bar very hastily onto the piston, and actually the bar was a bit too thick. I couldn't pull the whole thing out, but the whole idea is to get the dry seal to move. Okay, now I put some lubricant in there, and I used brake fluid first of all to lubricate it, and you can see I got some movement, but it wasn't after I put a long bar on it. You can see that is how much trouble it was. Right, so once I got it free and lubricated, and I knew that the seal wasn't going to grip the piston, I could go ahead then and use some leverage and move it out of the bore on the caliper. Okay, well it got so far, and then the box section actually got trapped. So I cut that off and then used a pair of mole grips and removed it. You can see where the cut marks are on the piston, just there. And what we have here, okay, is the rubber seals are actually holding this one in. It's in not bad condition. The corrosion has not got into the bores. It's very superficial rust. So, yeah, not too bad. And this is just one of those desperate measures. There are other ways of doing it, and I'm going to have to cover these in another video. You'll probably see the WD-40 on the bench. That's not mine. I use brake fluid on this little puppy here. So, yeah, now we've got this, I can now strip the rest of the rubber off, clean it up, and then put the pistons and seals in. Fair game, yeah? So, brilliant comment from Tom Meatham. He basically says there are actually 2 different pistons for the D2 calipers. And he's right, there are 2 different types. And I'll explain that in this video. Right, so we have pistons that had already stripped out earlier, a bit like Blue Peter, if you remember them. 2 different pistons here, and it depends on the chassis number, and there's obviously 2 different seal kits as well, which this is very relevant because with Paddocks it will tell you to look from chassis number to whichever, whereas Brookwell's, which this is a bit more of a detailed website, will tell you up to which age the pistons will fit, and they're actually a bit more comprehensive than I thought they'd be. So looking at this, we've got Discovery 2, all a certain piston number, which I'm not going to quote here, I'll tell you it later. braking front brakes from 1998 to 2002. And then there's a lot more vehicles that piston actually fits at certain ages. This is very chassis number relevant. The later pistons are actually smaller, so this list here is for the earlier type caliper, which is what we have on the bench. Okay, to start off with, I just ordered one for an example so I could show you. Okay, this is a SEK0000020. Right, so this is the piston for the later type Discovery caliper. Okay, and it is actually smaller. I like the wrapping on this. It's got greaseproof paper on it. But look, see that? That is loose as hell. You don't want that sort of fitting. It's not going to seal. It doesn't work. So that's just one spare. I'll find a job for that at some point. Right, so the ones that we have for this are STC 1918. And the piston brake caliper. Okay, this is the one that fits the earlier D2 caliper, plus the other ones that were listed earlier in the video. Okay, so we have 4 of these because we have 2 calipers. All right, and they should be a nice snug fit. Okay, like that. Remember, calipers get hot and things expand, and you don't want it too loose, and it shouldn't be too tight. Right, so we're away. We can get on with this. The rubber kit is SDC 1919. Both of the sealed kits for the front calipers are listed on the paddock site, as you can see there, along with the chassis numbers. Right, so in the kit you have your hydraulic seals. They are not dependent on which way they go round, and you also have your rubber boots as such. Okay, so you want to keep them in the packets till you're ready to use them. Okay, so we're going to do both sets of calipers here. The rear pistons, there apparently is only one number, and that is STC 1908, and you'll need 2 of those for 2 calipers because there's 1 piston per caliper. Okay, again, Brit part, it measures out exactly the same. Shiny, nice new piston, fits in just nicely, or it should fit in just nicely. Pops in like that, and yeah, okay, so that's the correct piston for the rear caliper. These are not stainless steel, they're chrome coated, and I'm pretty sure they'll last the life of the vehicle. You can see that I actually bashed that one out of the rear. The seal kit here is SDC 1909 for the rear calipers, and there you go, it's the same thing again. You get 2 seals and you get the rubbers as well. Now what I'll do is I'll show you what you get in a pack, because the caliper overhaul kit is a bit of a loose term. I can't put it any other way, because full overhaul kit you'd have pins and the such like. So basically the rubbers, they're all synthetic rubber. Just remember, you don't want to set light to these. And of course you get boots for the slider pins as well in here, so it's okay for a kit. Slider pins, you have to buy them separately. Now I paid £37 in total for 2 sets. We'll do those later. So, okay, first of all, what I'd like to say about these calipers is if the bores are a little bit scored, well, you get away with it. But the main thing, what you need to do is to make sure all the grooves are cleaned out. And like in the last video, if you watched that about the Defender caliper, okay, I used a small screwdriver to scrape out the grooves, and it's important that they're not nicked or damaged in any way. If they are, then the caliper is unserviceable. Just to make sure the bores are nice and clean, I've used Scotch-Brite. You'll probably notice it looks like the stuff that you would use in the kitchen for scouring the pans, and to be honest with you, that is exactly what it is. Okay, so cleanliness is always really important with calipers. Any hydraulic equipment, you don't want grit getting stuck under the seals and causing scores, because that will end to leakage at the end of the day. Okay, so this needs a little bit more cleaning out, but you can see what I'm trying to do is just make it as clean as possible. The only time that you'd want to fail one of these calipers basically is if there is corrosion inside where the lip seal is. If it's got corrosion where it looks like it's going to leak fluid, then this piston Sorry, I mean this caliper body would be scrap. But these were extremely rusty on the outside, but brake fluid tends to preserve the insides. So we've got away with it here, which is good. Here's a clip here of what the calipers actually look like, first of all, and after an electrolysis dump and cleaning them up. They've come up actually really, really well, which I'm surprised. So I'm using a bit of air here to clean out the as much as I can. In general, you do not use any mineral oils when cleaning. Use brake cleaner. Okay, so that's very presentable and it's serviceable, so we can go ahead and put the seals in. So if you didn't watch the last video about the Defender calipers, maybe you just come in to look at the D2 ones. Brake fluid, aerosol brake fluids, brilliant. Brake fluid and red grease. Red grease is a lubricant which is compatible with brake fluid. No other grease is, and I would say that you need clean rags and all clean instruments. Now I've got my shreddies here, which I don't use anymore. Container always clean, no dust or anything in it. And basically the red rubber grease, always keep the lid on when you're not using it. Make sure it's perfectly clean. Okay, so these are an ordeal to get the rubber boots on or get the pistons past the rubber boots. However, it is possible. And here you go. I'm just pushing the piston back to show you that that it works. Okay. Now, I did actually, to admit, I did have a little bit of trouble first of all, and I had to use these large piston pad spreaders and a G-cramp and these small ones. Okay. Choice of tool is yours. However, you will not be able to push them in by hand. Okay, so piston goes in on the piss. It won't go in. It has to go in dead straight. Okay, that's the first rule you have to remember. Okay, this rubber boot is a complete and utter bastard. Okay, it has a lip which has to fit in a recess. Okay, you can see the lip there. It has to fit in the caliper recess here, and you can only do that when you've got the piston in the rubber boot. Okay, so it's a bit fiddly. This edge, or the wiper seal, if you'd like to call it, is the thing that causes the most trouble. But if you push it in straight on this rubber boot, it will go. What I like to do is put a little bit of rubber grease in on the seal lip and then in the body of the rubber as well, just for lubrication later on. Right, so basically you have to take the seal over the piston. You cannot fit this onto the caliper body and then push the piston through it unless you're really clever. So basically the idea is to push the rubber boot past the piston, right? So you have the lip, you can then fit that into the caliper body. I hope you understand this. Okay, so you do it like this. Obviously it's going to have rubber grease on it to help you. And once it's in the groove, which is quite easy to do once you get the hang of it. Right, so anyway, well, what I'm going to do is get the Fuchs rubber grease, red rubber grease. It's better to use this stuff than anything else, and I didn't see anywhere in this seal kit any red rubber grease, so you can get these pots off eBay fairly cheaply, and it has a multitude of uses, mainly for brake components, but you can also use that for assembly on other things where rubber is can be a real pain because it likes to grip. Anyway, so the seal's in. Make sure it's not twisted. Make sure it's lubricated enough. Okay, right. So the seal's in, and then what I'm going to do, I showed you how to do the seal. I have to make sure it's the right way round. Is rubber grease on the piston. And you don't need to be too liberal with this, or you can be, it doesn't matter. Basically, you get it around the right way and then slide it over. Okay, so at this point the piston gets very, very slippery. Okay, so piston in a comfortable position, and then with the edge of the boot, you can then drop it into the notch, or the first notch of the caliper body. Okay. Now, the first one, maybe it might be a bit awkward. The second, third, fourth, fifth, and whatever, it gets a lot easier. Now, this is where your piston becomes a little bit wild. and you have to get it dead straight, otherwise it will not go in. Okay, now I'm going to show a couple of examples of tools, and you decide which one might be best for you, because everybody has their own ways of doing things. Now, I did actually manage to push one of these in by hand. So I used the G-cramp first of all, and believe it or not, G-cramps are crap. They are very, very weak. You can see the thread is on the piss there. It's because it's been used somewhere else and it's bent, okay? This is not going to help whatsoever. So that G-cramp is basically scrap unless it's used for welding. Let me just reposition this camera here. Well, the boss that I have in there, basically, or the top hat fitting I have in there, I did get that with something for use with another job. We are going to have Neil Enzer from Fourby before make some kit up for us, so we have some spreaders and pushers and such like, the specialist tools. Now, G-cramp first of all, if it's not in the right place and if it's not dead center, you're not going anywhere at all. Okay, well, I'll come back to that. That actually gets annoying. You get frustrated with this if you haven't sussed it yet. Pushing it in by hand, it's possible if you've got really strong hands and you push it in dead square. It won't go in any other way. It has to be square. All right. So that is actually square. That's only, you can feel a click. If it goes into place, you can feel a click. All right. And you can see with my hand, I've pushed it so far, but I'm not the strongest of blokes. I know I do a lot of heavy work, however, I'm not going to tire myself out. Small piston spreader, or piston, yeah, it is a piston spreader. Okay, that, well, I'll show you what it does. It will do the job if you get it in the right place. However, the piston spreader, okay, it tends to be very weak on the ends of the paddles. So it will push where the thread is, and then you can see this. It's actually not going to go in square whatsoever, unless you've got one that is a lot sturdier, or you're just going to use that for the final push. Because this is now in a square, I can have another go with a straight G-cramp. If you notice these cheap G-cramps, they tend to lose the cup off the thread first of all, but it's in and it is actually going home. You can see that just like that. Okay, so you do get to feel where the second seal is, or the hydraulic seal, and it's gone past that. That's brilliant. Okay, that's in and home. And I'll just, here we go. This is a bit of an effort to pull, especially if you're trying to do it to the camera. Okay, but it moves, okay. These are a little bit tough first off. You'll find once they've been worked a little bit with a brake pedal that they'll be fine. Okay, so I'll have another go pushing it with my thumbs. Yeah, that is going home. All right, so I'm all right. I'm happy with that. I did all of them like this, and I actually used this larger one as well. Now this one costs about £65 now. I paid 53 for this a couple of years ago. And it's been a good tool when I've needed it, which hasn't been that often. However, this is actually going to be now promoted to my workspace, because I've now started doing Iveco vans and the such like. This works very well for pushing pistons in, especially if they're a little bit stiff like this one. You can see the paddles are not bending at all. Okay, right, so that's in, and I'm just going to get some air on this, if I can find the air gun. Put the bleed nipple in first, otherwise I'm going to find the air's just going to rush out the other side. So that's bunged that hole up, and I'll get the air on this, and I'll push the piston out a bit because we're not quite finished here. Okay, always making sure my hand's not in the way, and yeah, I need a little bit of a seal here, and using a rag is pretty good. Okay, now I'll blow that, and that will push the piston out. Okay, you can see how it moves. It actually wants to retract a little bit, which is right, because the hydraulic seal helps retract the piston. So the next thing is to get the rubber boot end into the groove on the piston. That's what it's there for. It retains it there. Not that it stops dirt getting in there, but it helps. Okay, I'm sorry this is out of camera shot at the moment, but basically I've got it in there, and you'll find after a while, moving it a couple of times, that the piston will move a lot freer. So the front one again, I'll just demonstrate this, okay. I didn't tell you in the last clip that it's good to actually pull its skirt back up again, okay, to make sure that the rubber doesn't trap. Now there is a certain place you can get to where the piston sits and it's straight. Alright, now I've got it there. Yep, no, I've lost it. This is a little bit fiddly, but you have a certain feel. You'll know where it goes to, and yeah, this makes your arms, or shall I say your fingers, tired. But after one or two, you'll know where you're going to. This is in a good position now, and it's straight. Always check that it's straight, because straight things go into straight holes. If you go on the piss, they won't go in. Now, yeah, turn this round the right way. Piston spreader, or the pad spreader, or whatever you'd like to call it, a heavy duty one. This works fantastic, okay, and that's now going to push that in easily. The smaller one will work if you have patience. You have to position it in the right way. And right, so just making sure that the rubber doesn't get trapped. So there we go. The rubber boot is probably the most awkward part of this operation. Now, it took me about 20 minutes in total with clean calipers, perfectly clean calipers, to get all these pistons in and working. Cleaning the calipers up, on the other hand, probably took about a week with electrolysis and everything else involved. And stripping, obviously, is probably the hardest work. Right, so let's see if I can pull that in by hand. Don't worry too much if it is a little bit stiff, first of all. You'll find that it will free up very, very quickly, as long as you've used rubber grease. The thing is, using a rubber grease, you can put these on the shelf and leave them for a fair while. Brake fluid, not so much so. It tends to drain away and dry out after a while. So there you go. There's more to this caliper overhaul, because we've got yet to do the caliper carriers and the slider pins, and I'll show you a trick later on in the next video.